Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Between Sessions with Berries. I'm excited to have our guest today. She has got a lot of things going on and a lot to share with you all. Her name's Lorain Moorehead, LCSW, licensed psychotherapist, EMDR approved consultant, clinical supervisor, and faculty associate at Arizona State University. With over 18 years of experience, she specializes in trauma-informed care, EMDR, perinatal mental health, and supporting high-achieving professionals navigating burnout, anxiety, and complex relational patterns. Lorain is also the host of, I love the name of this podcast, the host of the Self-Carapist Therapist podcast, where she explores research-informed, creative, and sustainable approaches to clinical practice. Today, she's here to talk about therapist burnout, ethical supervision, and building a career that actually supports your well-being. Lorain, what a mouthful. Oh my gosh, you've got so much going on. I love it. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait to chat, Kim.
Yes, me too. So you work at this intersection of therapy, education, clinical consultation. Maybe we could just start out and just talk about how did these paths evolve for you across these roles? And now, how are they influencing like one another in your day-to-day work? Maybe we could just kind of talk about all of that and the intersection and how it all comes together for you.
Yeah. And it'll probably even, this little description will probably even lend itself to my perspectives on burnout, because I feel like a lot of it has been very preventative to getting to that point for me. Because something I've realized and kind of put words to later, more recently, is that I love to learn. And that's one of my core values. And so I found that when I was actively engaged in some type of learning, which also translates to educating others, then I'm excited. Then when I'm up on the research, I'm excited. I'm hopeful. I'm in a forward-moving direction. My clients are making progress. And so I know that that's something for me to always keep right in front of me, that I want to be learning and evolving. And so that started with reconnecting with my alma mater, ASU, and being able to work with them in teaching up and coming grad students there. And that's been about a decade, if not 12 years in the making. And then from there evolved the podcast, because I wanted to keep learning and hearing what other people are doing in our field. I love that. It gets me so pumped. So that's how it's all come together and branched off from there.
That is amazing. Yeah. So since that's one of your core values, keeping that learning perspective in everything that you're doing, it sounds like keeping you passionate and not burning out with everything that you're trying to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It keeps me from feeling stale. It keeps me from feeling bored. If I'm learning something, and I like a deep dive, Yeah, I want to learn, and then I want to know how it started, who your mom was, I want to go deep. So if I'm doing that, then I'm feeling really connected to the work I'm doing. And that's in all areas. I will deep dive skincare just as much as I'll deep dive stuff in our field. That just keeps me excited in all areas.
Yeah, that's really cool. Because part of this podcast, too, is Between Sessions with Berries, right? So a lot of us are doing sort of entrepreneurial things like teaching, like you, and doing another podcast. And even for myself, I find that I've got to be super passionate about something if I want to be entrepreneurial about it, because it's something I'm going to have to talk about forever, essentially, if I want to keep going with it. So I like this value, this perspective of it's got to be something I'm super interested in and is matching my values to be able to continue with it and put it out there into the world. I think that's a really cool way to look at it.
I think that's a really important element that you just mentioned, because I think we can be good at something and not necessarily feel passionate about it. And I think we can be called to treat a certain population and find that we don't really like talking about it. I've had that happen where I've been approached, can you speak on this? I'm like, yeah, for sure. And I'm writing the presentation and I'm like, this does not bring me joy. I don't want to deep dive it. I don't know. It's not sticking. It's just not connecting with me. I'm not lit up by it. And I think that is really key. Within our passion, there can be little sub areas that really call to us. And when that happens, you just get in a flow and it doesn't feel hard necessarily. Not that some things aren't sometimes hard. I think that's okay too. But what keeps you going is finding the things that are really calling to you. Like, I need to know more about this. Oh, there's something I'm missing. I want to know what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And its role in preventing burnout for therapists, even entrepreneurs, but therapists too. I talk to a lot of therapists and it's like, gosh, they feel like they get pigeonholed in this niche and they've got to be seeing the client in that niche forever and they lose the passion for it, but they're still doing it because that's their niche or whatever. And it burns them out. And it's like, instead, like you're talking about, like, let's find that thing that we're still getting lit up about and maybe even change our niche for the therapists listening that are needing support between sessions for burnout even. So I love that idea of paying attention to that and following that so you're in flow like you're talking about.
To your point, a caseload kind of has a way of doing that. You can be in your niche and then you're like, oh, wow, a lot of these people also are having this. So I'm talking about this other little particle 100 times a week. So let me go with that a little bit and notice what I can learn and how I can serve that. And so then you have another little niche within a niche with no conscious effort besides that I'm going to just pour a little bit of attention and attunement to this one thing. Right now, all of my clients all came to me for this thing, but I noticed that they're all step parents. So what am I talking about? What can I speak to? What can I learn about? Who can I research that talks about this subject and then go with that a little bit? So all of a sudden, now I've followed the passion. I didn't do anything to find it. It found me. But what can I do to really be informed about speaking to this area as well?
Absolutely. So talking about that, the niche and that sort of thing, what drew you to working with the high achieving professionals and clinicians in general with the work that you do?
Gosh, that's a good question. Actually, probably the same mechanism because I spent about most of my early career was working with children and families. Yeah. And I found as I transitioned away from working primarily with kids that the parents that I was really reaching who were really picking up what I was putting down were the really high achieving, very busy, perfectionistic. I want to do well. I know on a cognitive level what I want to see, and I just can't make it over that line. And so then I really started to think about what are we doing? What are the modalities and interventions that really seem to be working? What isn't working? And how can I speak more clearly to those folks? So I think I hadn't really thought about that, but I think that's how it really started to evolve. I noticed that we were making a really good connection and really good progress, even with the child as the client, and this was their external system. And so then it slowly became that was the primary system I was working with.
That's amazing. Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting how it evolves like that. It really is.
Yeah, when you let it, right? Because to your point, it's easy to stay. And that's good, too, if that speaks to you. I know a lot of very happy clinicians doing amazing work that stay invested in that one piece that they carved out for themselves. But when you're making a career 20 plus years and beyond, I think it's okay, too, to follow wherever the evolution is calling you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that message. I hope you guys are listening to that part of it. I think it's so important. So that kind of leads me into another thing I was thinking about when I was reading your bio and learning about you. What do you think the unique mental health challenges are that you see with therapists, business owners, high-performing clients that often get maybe missed or minimized?
So one thing that is always jumping out in the research is that with business owners in particular, we've got a lot of co-occurring ADHD. And there, I know.
Can I jump up and down?
And I think some of what we're talking about is why that there's an opportunity to take some controlled risks that there may not be when you're in someone else's business, which is really good and makes a great opportunity when you're being called to some spontaneity. It allows that. It allows some of these connections to be forged, like the conversations and things. And then we know that starting a project can be the exciting, the dopamine releasing phase for someone with ADHD. And then finishing for some of us feels really good. But sometimes with our neurotypical brains, it's like, I couldn't care less about reaching that metric. I want to start it. I want to get that initial like pump of dopamine. And then once it's successful, and if the idea is great and the foundation is good, sometimes there's an opportunity for some delegation for our entrepreneurial friends. So I think that's why a couple of the factors that make ADHD a common element. I would say anxiety is also very common because when you're at that level, whether it's a CEO or an entrepreneur or a therapist entrepreneur, what does my husband always say? You eat what you kill. And so there's a level of anxiety with having to be out there performing, seeing yourself in all of these roles all the time. I think with the perfectionism, I just deep dived this with an author on perfectionism the other day, but he was pointing out that there's a shame element and a feeling of having to prove yourself that's really prevalent with that sort of mindset. So I would say those are three categories that I'm working with and dealing with a lot. I will also add sometimes some CPTSD is pretty common with these really high achievers who are always like output, have to perform, because those were messages that they internalized early on and are still living to the standard that was set very early on.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So you're in my brain right now. I had a business meeting yesterday with my business manager, and she's like, you are not allowed to start another thing until you finish this to-do list I just emailed you. And I'm like, okay, yes. Because oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I get a new idea every day. And then it's so fun to like create things, but then it's the details like, okay, you've got to run this membership. You've got to show up every single month and give content and all that. Like that gets so boring so quickly for me. And I know a lot of people I talk to. So it's the constant struggle of what you're talking about. And then there's anxiety around, not like,
why can't I do it? Why isn't it happening? I should.
I should be over here finishing, or not even finishing, but just like coming back around and like following up on the details that are important to maintain something. You know what I mean? So it's that ADD and the anxiety. And then like you're talking about the shame, and it's just, yeah, you've pinpointed it exactly. And it's really interesting to hear that the research is supporting that. And you're seeing that with my type of personality and a lot of the people listening. I think a lot of therapists don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs, but starting your own private practice is entrepreneurial, and you're running a business and you're doing all the things and how do I market and all that. So,
and we do that sometimes in this field out of a feeling of necessity. Like you feel like you've sort of aged out of some of the other opportunities, or you see a need from a financial perspective, try and make more. But then, you're doing all these entrepreneurial tasks that you might not have identified with. I also like to normalize at this point in a conversation that not everyone has to be an entrepreneur either. I don't think it's a shame thing. I don't think it's a pride thing. I really like to look at goodness of fit. And for some people who really do well with a pre-prescribed metric and meeting that, and that feels good, then why wouldn't you partner with someone who's taking care of that other stuff? I don't think that's a less than thing. I think it's amazing to see people, whatever industry, whatever walk of life they're in, to find a fit that works for them and allows them to lean into their areas of genius and do that, not feel like, oh, well, the next step up is to take on this. I have conversations, you probably do too, with entrepreneurial therapists all the time who are like, oh, but I don't want to do marketing. Why are we doing social media? That's not our job. And I'm like, great, do something where that isn't your job. If you're marketing a practice, it might be. You might be doing something like that. But if that sounds like the worst, hugest digression from where you want to be in a therapy job, then go partner with someone who's doing that and just do the clinical work. I think that's beautiful.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's amazing to hear you say that out loud, because that literally was like kind of my next question. You're working with these people, you see the patterns, you see it in the research, it's supported, but then how do you help, I say these people, me, how do you help? Can we have a therapy session? No, I'm just kidding. What's the resilience? How do you not burn out? And I kind of, what I think I'm hearing you say is like identify those places that make you feel and figure out how to outsource it or get help with it, or find a different fit, like maybe working for a group practice or something that you're not going to have to do all of that stuff, and that's totally okay, I think is what I'm hearing you say. Yeah.
Yeah. I think really keeping in mind that all of our traits come together to make an individual. So sometimes it can feel like there's a flood of therapists. There's a flood of therapists in my specialty. There are a flood of therapists in my specialty posting in the same places or networking, advertising, whatever, in the same way that I am. So I have to keep going. And I want to challenge that belief to these are my skills, and going back to values, how I said one of mine is learning. One of mine, maybe you identify with this one too, is creativity.
Yes.
And so I like to be making something, and sometimes some of the work that I do, whether it be a worksheet, whether it even be a website page, that taps into that a little bit for me. So that kind of makes me feel fulfilled more than some things that other people might be doing. But not everyone is leading with those two values. And so why not, if those aren't yours and yours are like analytics, whatever yours are, if find somebody who's are different and they can do the stuff that you don't want to do. That might not mean that your name is on the building. That doesn't mean anything, because finding the right synergy with a partnership or with a practice that kind of gets you and has carved out an opportunity for you to just focus on where you want to work, that can be just as powerful, just to find where you fit in the field, because people have so many ideas, so many group practices run in different ways with different values. And so there really are opportunities. I just think sometimes we're filling our orbit with people just like us. And maybe it's because it feels like everybody around us is just like us, but that's not the case. There are so many different types of people, even within our field, to be working for and working with.
Yes. Oh, gosh. I love this conversation so much. I see that progression. It's like, okay, I work for a community mental health, then I go to a group practice maybe, and then I go into my own private practice. Now I've got to scale to a group, or I've got to scale to like courses and that sort of thing. So I feel like a lot of therapists maybe feel the pressure to have that trajectory. And it, like you're saying, it just might not be a good fit. And it's so okay just to recognize that and go with that and remove all the pressure to be that if that's not what it feels right for you.
I love the idea of permission. It's permission to think about like, well, if that isn't a fit, why? And what pieces would be a fit? And what could that output look like that isn't a course or that isn't whatever? Like, what could that look like for you? When you're reaching people, how are you doing it? When people are responding to you, what is it that you're usually doing? And how do you do more of that?
Exactly. Yeah. And that leads to another thing I want to talk about is like the tools. Like, what tools do you recommend like building out or putting into your life that could lend to building this long-term burnout resistant career in mental health for a therapist?
Tools in a career perspective, or like
maybe not even tools, but like mindset tools or just perspectives that could just help build, I guess resiliency might be the right word for long-term mental health care. So, and I think that's what we're touching on, but I just wonder if there's other points around that you've noticed in the research or the work that you do yourself, like being a professor and all of that, to help people enter into the workforce and stay long-term and not have to like find new careers or that sort of thing from burnout.
Not to be too cheesy, but I think I've heard from a lot of my clients, even colleagues that have ADHD and are therapists, that AI note writing has been a total game changer. People that I started out with almost 20 years ago are like, can you imagine how our lives in community mental health would have been different with this? Because that was such a thorn in our side.
Gosh. Do you remember like it was like a Medicaid like audit checklist essentially, and you had to like make sure all your documentation had all these like, oh my gosh, that was such a nightmare.
The demographic sheet, we'd be like tracking those down.
Oh my
I laugh about this now, but I formed some lifelong friendships during this time of my life, so I look back on it fondly. But we joke about how a list of people's signed notes would go out and all of us would be on it. And so we would joke about like the people who'd get the award for the longest that week. If anyone's thinking of the movie Clueless, to further age myself here, the teacher was going through all the tardies and somebody had, I forget, maybe 92 tardies for the semester. And he gets up and gives a speech and he thanks McDonald's for making these little Egg McMuffins, without which I might never be tardy. But that's what I think of when that list came out, because some people would have a couple overdue notes that they had to sign, and then some people would have like 30, and we'd be like, congratulations.
Good job.
Speech.
So funny. Oh my gosh. So funny and so true. And then it's like you had to like track, you had to see each client like a certain amount of hours every month, like to meet Medicaid standards. I don't know if you had to do that, but that was the other thing. So I hear what you're saying, like having these AI tools now that just take that out of the equation is just, I hate to use the word game changer. It's so like cliched or whatever, but it is literally life-changing, game changer type stuff, tools that we have as clinicians now, I think.
Yeah. And even on that note, EHRs that give us the ability to design our own notes and put what we think is important in those notes, and then be able to speak to and write to. Of course, we always have the things that we need to check in with ethically and speak to our licensure about and things like that. But to have a flow that works for you and to be able to design a note in the flow that you're speaking to clients, I think goes a long way too. So a lot of those adaptations that have been available to agencies and individuals over time is super cool too, I think.
Are you using stuff like that with like supervision or any technology to help with your role and maybe speed up what you're doing with clinicians and the people you work with?
That's exactly what I've done with supervision notes. I have a format that I've developed that goes in the flow that we talk about. And so it's really easy to plug in what we've determined. I have one place where I supervise their interns and folks, and they use the Google, I don't even know if it's called G Suite anymore, but the Google Workspace. Yeah, that's what it's called now. Mm-hmm. And they've got the HIPAA compliant version, and they've got a lot of really neat tools that all work together in that. That's been really cool. And I also use Dropbox, which allows me to get videos of all of my supervisees. I have the HIPAA compliant or the BAA signed with Dropbox so that they're able to just drop them in there, and then we can either play them in video meetings and go through them and start and stop, and I can give feedback that way, or I can watch them on my own and come back with feedback. I supervise in Arizona, and here for licensure, folks need 10 hours of live supervision that I'm watching either on a video or in their session. And so I've loved that so much that I make everybody do it a lot more than 10 hours, because I think that's where they're really getting confidence. They're getting feedback. We're capturing things that we might not be able to capture with just report about how the session went alone. So that's one of the other little doodads that I use.
What a cool workflow. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and in berries, I don't usually just go into berry stuff, but just hearing you talk about it, I'm not trying to promote berries, you guys, but I love berries. But in berries, we've got the HIPAA compliant GPT assistant, right? And a lot of supervisors are using that tool. They record the supervision session, they put their own template in there. But then the GPT is like a clinical assistant. So you consult it against the note, and it gives you feedback, and you can like then print out and give to your supervisee or whatever.
Whoa.
And it's super cool. And we use it with sessions with clients too, because you could just say like the prompts I love in there is like, what am I missing with this client? Tell me what I haven't picked up on or what I'm not talking about. And it gives you like so much feedback. And also with supervision, people are using prompts like that. So I don't know if Dropbox has some sort of tool you can consult with in there too, but that's next level clinical game changer for me anyway, to be able to just have this like clinical assistant that's giving me feedback and telling me, have you thought about that? What about this intervention? You could try this. Have you talked about that? You missed this. It's just super interesting the way AI is evolving.
Yeah, totally. Dropbox is really just a HIPAA compliant place to put the whole video, because you could do that in the HIPAA compliant Google Workspace too. It's not quite as simple, but I was having a hard time. Well, I'll tell you, because it's kind of funny. When I started this using more virtual, because we used to get really creative with how to view these sessions. But when I started to do it virtual, people were I asked in one of the groups where therapists gather, and people were telling me, U.S. mail is HIPAA compliant, and you can put a thumb drive in U.S. mail and have them mail it to you, or go pick up a thumb drive. And I'm like,
really?
I'm like, I get it that on paper, following the letter of the law, that is legit. But there is no world that you're going to tell me that feels more secure to a
client than putting
crazy.
their session in the mail.
Oh my gosh.
I get it that might stand up to an audit or something, but there's no world that you're going
No
to tell
way.
me that a client would feel more confident than you simply emailing you know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm not saying don't email it. Don't email a session, you guys. If I were the patient, I would probably be like, yes, please email it rather than send it in the mail.
I mean, who hasn't gotten their mail lost like a million times? Where does this mail even end up? Who knows?
Yeah,
you
don't
know?
put it in your luggage and don't put it in the mail. Those are my two. I'll die on that hill. Yeah. So
Love that.
then when I did my own deep dive, I came up with that Dropbox was a good alternative. Yeah.
I didn't know that about Dropbox, so it's really cool to hear that. So I hope you guys are listening. That sounds like a good solution. That might work for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully there'll be more. I think there's an
Yeah.
opportunity to know that we're exchanging sessions in that way. I should add, just so I can say I did, with client permission, we're doing
Yes.
this. Clients know that it's happening. Anytime that it's happening, they've signed off. They appreciate the feedback and the help that it offers their clinician to be able to move forward, or they say no. But
Yeah.
when they say yes, I think there's a real opportunity to continue to have more options for where to put those videos until you're done and then they get deleted. But when I did the deep dive, I found 2 options. So
Oh, that's very cool. I just love the innovative thinking, ways to make the supervision or whatever you're trying to do with somebody more meaningful and be able to use it in different ways than just like traditional, like right back in the agency kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Just jotting down these like formulaic notes that we had to keep or whatever. So
Yeah, that's been a real passion of mine, to move away from just turn this in, sign that, make sure this looks that way, into like,
Yeah.
how am I leaving my time with my supervisor and feeling like I know what to do? I feel confident. I've found my area. I know what I'm good at. I know where I want to go. I know what I want to learn more about when time and finances permit. I think
Yeah.
that is really an important use of supervision as well. That back in the beginning of my journey, it didn't necessarily always look like that.
yeah, no, I love that. But it's so important. It's more about the actual content than the process. Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Well, this has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate you just sharing all your insights. I think it's super helpful, especially to clinicians that are just trying to survive between clients from session to session. It's really helpful to give this guidance. So I appreciate that. How do people find you or work with you, or what work are you putting out there in the world that people can benefit from your work, and where can they locate that?
Yeah. So the Self-Carapist Therapist podcast is on all of the podcasts. It's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and all of the smaller ones. And there we've got experts deep dive. This will not surprise anyone now, but we've got experts in the field deep diving their own interventions, approaches, and the development of the tools and interventions that they're using. And so I think that that's a great one. I like to think of it as a tool to use today and then a deep dive to go on in the long term. If you're like, oh my gosh, this speaks to me, I want to do EMDR, or I want to learn more about IFS, or even like, oh, I don't know if that one is the right fit for me. So I thought I wanted to learn more about this approach or that approach, but I feel like it doesn't necessarily speak to my values. So maybe I'll wait for the next thing that I thought I wanted to learn about and decide if I want to go in that route. So you can check out all the details and see a list of all the past sessions at lorainmoorehead.com/podcast. And I've got a personal curriculum that you can deep dive just to go through any curiosities or passions that you might have in this field. And then I'm on most of the social medias at the Self-Carapist.
Ah, I love that. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to go check it out myself. Thank you for taking the time today.
Yeah, so great talking to you, Kim. Nice chatting a little bit more.
You too.